live on TikTok and coming to you on YouTube whenever Jovis gets around to downloading it.
It's going, right?
All right, we're here.
All right, here we are. This is Churps from the Nest, episode 24.
Hey.
2024 can't handle it. That was a song.
2024, so we're going to raise our glasses as we always do.
2024.
2024.
It's coming quick.
2024 is coming quick. And we are tasting the 2019 Stark Conde Cabernet Sauvignon from
South Africa.
South Africa.
Get your passports, because we're going.
Stellenbosch. Okay, this is it's a blended Cabernet, but to be for a wine to be able to call itself Cabernet in the United States, here in California as well, 75% of the grapes need to be Cabernet Sauvignon. The other blending grapes could be, something like Merlot or Petit Verdot, Malbec. This breakdown is 85% Cabernet, 10% Petit Verdot, 2% Malbec, 2% Petit Syrah, 1% Cabernet Franc.
Wow.
6 different vineyards, and I think it's great. Very drinkable right now. What do you think, Andrew?
It's a great wine. It's I like the boldness of it. It definitely has some grippiness, those tannins. And for me at least, it makes it stays in your mouth a lot longer.
I notice a lot more fruit from this Cabernet versus just that structure.
Right.
I like it.
It really is. What's the content on this one?
Only 13.5, so it's really not heavy and hot.
Right.
That's why I say it's really drinkable.
Yeah. The legs are still there, though.
Yeah, they're there.
Right. So what kind of foods would you put this with? Like, are we going with a steak, burger?
I mean, I'd go with steak, or you can if your fish was like sturgeon, you could go like that with it if you're barbecuing sturgeon, or I don't know. Cheese is just about any cheese. Chocolate.
Oh yeah.
All good red wine goes with chocolate. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I give this, I give it a thumbs up here, and then maybe 4 out of 5 glasses.
But we should start doing that.
Yeah, we should. I give this 4 out of 5 glasses.
Right.
But
good stuff.
the chances of me drinking 4 out of those 5 are probably pretty good. So I gotta watch that. No.
Right.
This is a new one Marlena brought in, and I think it should be on the short list of ones to repeats. Hopefully it's not killing her, breaking her back, and good prices that we're getting here. They'll come during between 3 and 6, and it's happy hour, so you get a little cheaper. What are happy hour prices for the?
Where's she at? Oh, she's at $8.
$8. Oh, she charged me $13 today. What?
You were here earlier.
I was here at 3:30. I was here at 3:30. She charged me $13. I want another half glass, damn it.
Yeah. I want to speak to the manager.
Yeah, exactly. Who's the owner here? All right, let's move on from the wine, but we'll never move away from it because it'll always be here. And if we need another one, we can just go down and get one. And let's welcome our guest here. She is a friend of the Grape Nest and a real good friend of our friend Art.
Yep.
So to speak.
I think about as close as friends could get. I mean.
Right. And also my neighbors.
Oh yeah.
So my neighbors.
So that's part again community right here. The people that sell block.
Right.
We're on the same block. I'm like neighbor to neighbor.
Yeah.
Andrew would text me, "Did you hear that?"
Oh yeah. Did you what happened last night? So today we have Peggy on, and this will be, you're not going to want to miss this one. All the tubers, the talkers out there. Do you want to speak on what you do? Your very important work, I believe, for this country. Yeah.
Well, first, thank you all, and thank you both for inviting me to be on this podcast. It was a surprise.
It was
like
quick.
Normally, I try to keep a low profile, but here we go. So, I'm an immigration attorney. I have been practicing law since 2011. This was a midlife career change for me because I figured if I was going to have to be working into my 60s, I wanted to do something that I felt good about, that I could have some autonomy over, and also that would kind of give me a way to kind of pay it forward based on my own family background. So what we mostly do is I have a small law firm in Oakland. We have about four or five part-time, 5 full-time employees. Most of our clients are in what you call, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Okay.
I just couldn't see your mic.
We're gonna have
Mic's
to get louder
specifically for
'cause
YouTube.
We gotta compete with the
Yeah,
party
you gotta
over
be
here.
loud so the
Okay.
TikTok
All right.
people can hear
Gotcha.
you.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you, I keep a low profile. This is what I mean.
Right, yeah.
So most
Speak
of our
softly with a
Or
strong.
like you're speaking to one of your problem clients.
No.
So most of our clients are in what is now called removal proceedings, but what it really kind of is it's a nicer way of saying you're in deportation proceedings. We're the immigration court, so we've had clients in proceedings in New York, New Jersey, Florida, and mostly California, like San Francisco and some in LA. That's most of them. We have a lot of asylum cases, and then we also have something has exploded over the past few years, which is
That happens here. We are right next to the street.
Okay. It's something relatively new called special immigrant juvenile status, and that's a type of immigration relief for young people under 21. It's kind of based on the foster care system model where young people are determined by a superior court that they're unable to reunify with one or both parents because they've been abused, abandoned, or neglected. And having got those orders from a superior court judge in California or any other state, that puts them on the path to be able to get a green card and become citizens of the U.S. That's most of the two main types of cases that we do. But we also do family immigration, like if you want to petition for a relative. And we also do U visa cases, which is also a humanitarian form of relief for immigrants who have become crime victims in the United States.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why I keep a low profile.
Right. All right.
So I was kind of interested in
confidentiality,
you
too.
said it was kind of a switch midlife here. Obviously you're trying to help these people as best you can. So and I've noticed that you're a very compassionate person, and it would take a lot of compassion and empathy to be able to connect with these people in a way to where they trust you. Because they are putting their trust in you. They're about ready to be deported, right?
Well, it could be.
Because of maybe the paperwork that they haven't gotten the right information or the right advice to be able to find their path to citizenship so they could be here legally.
Yeah, most of the people we represent are in proceedings in immigration court because they entered the United States without permission. And we're always hearing about people coming in through the southern border. And for a long time, you would say, oh, well, it's Latino population, and people coming from El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras. And now it's people coming from all over. So there's a lot of people from countries like, say, Africa or China. I just talked to a gentleman, when was that, just a week or so ago, where he came in, he flew from China, and they're coming in like from Europe or Africa, flying into places like Ecuador or Peru, and then making their way up, passing through country after country after country after country until they get to the southern border, and then they cross over to the United States, and then they get arrested by ICE or Customs and Border Patrol officials because they entered without permission, and they get placed in removal proceedings if they're fortunate, and then from there we get referred. They get referred to us.
Yeah, you say people are coming from this is from 2018. You got 11.2 million people coming from Mexico. 2.9 from China actually immigrating into the United States. 2.6 from India, 2 million from the Philippines, and then El Salvador 1.4. And people from El Salvador are trying to get out because the situation's bad there. So how many of these cases do you see? I mean, do you see a lot of El Salvadorian clients?
We have a lot from El Salvador, but we also have a lot of clients from Honduras and Guatemala. And now we're getting more from Nicaragua, Venezuela, we're seeing more from Peru. So more and more people are coming here because of either violence, like for example, gang violence with the MS-13 or Barrio 18, with gang violence, or just plain poverty, or because their economy has become so undermined that they just can't make a living anymore. And some of that could be because of American intervention in those countries.
Absolutely.
Where American corporations are being enriched while the local economy is being undermined. It could be that, could be domestic violence. It's any number of things. Religious persecution for being LGBT, for gay or transgender, all kinds of things. We're seeing all kinds. From the Central America or from other places. That's mostly what I'm seeing in El Salvador. And now, even though the president of El Salvador has announced a crackdown on gangs, which the media is not really telling the whole story about that, but now there are some Salvadorans coming here because they're saying they're afraid to stay in El Salvador because President Bukele is casting such a wide net to capture gangbangers that they are also sweeping up people who had no affiliation with gangs. And once they get in jail, it's almost impossible for them to get back out. So that's another wave of problems.
Yeah, that's a difficult situation down there. So if they're lucky enough to make it up here, and they've done so, and they're in here and they're illegal and facing deportation, what type of legal rights do they have? I mean, if you can prove that if you're like, say you're an LGBT and you're being persecuted there in El Salvador, and you have no rights there, basically, right? You could fear for your life, I would think. So can you make a case like that for your client?
Yes, you asked, your first question was, what legal rights do people have?
Well,
in the United States,
Yeah.
there was one immigration judge who was pretty well known. She was the former president of the Immigration Judges Union. So she was one of the few who had the authority to actually speak out publicly about what was going on with immigration judges and all of that. And what she famously said is that cases in immigration court are like death penalty cases in traffic court settings.
wow.
And this is exactly right, because immigration courts are not considered to be criminal courts. They're considered to be administrative courts. These are administrative judges. So because it's considered to be administrative, not criminal, you don't have those constitutional protections that would crop up in other cases under a crim law scenario. So they have the right to have an attorney, but there's no obligation for the government to provide one if you're indigent. Things like that. There's always a lot of concern about due process violations because immigration itself is really political. And the United States has got loaded with political overtones. Policies and procedures change all the time depending on which presidential administration is in charge. Immigration judges are under the purview of, the Department of Justice, instead of being independent like other federal immigration courts are, not immigration courts, sorry, like other federal courts are, the immigration courts are not as independent because they're under the Department of Justice. So the way you run into due process violations like that, just one extreme example was when Jeff Sessions was Attorney General. He was calling for mandatory meetings or conventions with immigration judges. And at one of those meetings a few years ago, when he was trying to really shut the door as much as possible on opportunities for asylum seekers, especially those fleeing domestic violence and gang activity, he told the immigration judges who were gathered there that immigration attorneys are a bunch of dirty lawyers. So if you have the head of the Department of Justice, so to speak, saying that's his position, and that's what he's saying to immigration judges who kind of have to follow his directives, what does that do for due process for people? How are they going to get their rights? The other part about that, you shouldn't have asked me these things.
Yeah, that is weaponization of the Department of Justice on humanity. Okay,
I would say that.
You know,
you
where did it all
that.
start? All right.
You could say that.
Hey, and TikTokers gotta apologize for the noise in the background, but there's a birthday party going on. Kick on over to YouTube when we publish it, and then you'll get a lot more clear because we're mic'd in on the lapel mics. All right.
Yeah.
Until we get a new set of mics and a new iPhone.
Yeah.
Good people over there. Good folks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And
that's a load of information like that. It's very deep.
It's been said, I mean, I can see it would apply in criminal court environments as well, but especially in immigration, that due process should not depend on your zip code. But very often it does. So if you have someone here in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is a more fortunate place for me to be able to practice because there's much more compassion and flexibility here than in other places. Someone who has a case, let's say an asylum case here in the San Francisco Immigration Court, that would be strong here in San Francisco, if they move and go down to, let's say, the Atlanta Immigration Court, you can say Atlanta's a place for black people. But for immigrants in removal proceedings in the Atlanta Immigration Court, you could just about kiss it goodbye. There was one. You said I can be real here, right?
Absolutely. We want numbers.
Right.
Fun facts. We're all about facts
Yeah.
here. We're not projecting bullshit here.
All right. Well, a few years ago, we were reading about an immigration judge in Atlanta who was retiring. She's my age. She was, at least at that time, I think.
45.
45. Here, have some more. Keep drinking. You're doing just fine. So she was my age. Oops. She was, I believe, a deacon or had some position at the AME church where she's a member in Atlanta. So I take that to mean she's a person of faith. And she's black. And she was an immigration judge. And I looked up her statistics for the percentage of cases that she denied. I think she denied something like 98% of the asylum cases that came before her.
98%.
98%. And in one case, it was reported that she challenged a person in court saying, well, you said you're a Christian. How come you don't know such and such scripture? That's totally inappropriate.
Yeah, completely.
Totally. It's like just completely inappropriate. But that's the type of difference that you could have. And that was no matter what country people came from. So if they were in Atlanta, and you're thinking, well, I'd like to be in Atlanta, it's like, well, it depends what you're in Atlanta for. Right. So you have those broad disparities in terms of how likely are you to be able to get relief and a fair hearing and a consistent application of the law.
Right. And I guess at that point it's unfortunate that she used her bias in a way which is, from a psychological standpoint, not viewing these people for who they are, but basing it from a religious standpoint.
Well, and I think to me,
or
but it's
like,
hard for
you
me
don't want to live in Atlanta. No.
So, well,
Well, you can live anywhere, right?
My family's not
once
from
you
the
get,
deep south.
but once you
so
get immigration status, right, you go live anywhere. It's not like you have to live in.
Maybe.
You have to live in Atlanta or
Maybe
not?
if I were an immigrant, and there's a lot of immigrants living in Texas,
Yeah.
I would say,
Here's a
okay.
map of the
No.
of the metropolitan areas with the largest numbers of immigrants. You know, a lot of your bigger cities, a lot down in Texas. I would, you see the border town, Houston and Dallas, Fort Worth, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, because they're very close, and then Miami. I'm assuming that's more of a
New
Cuban
York City
population.
is pretty big up there too.
Yeah, New York
New
City
York.
as well. That's going to have a lot of your European people. I'm just assuming, I'm making a broad statement here, wiping it. It's just a big brush here that I'm painting with. They're just showing areas that they're all going to these big metropolis areas, and I imagine that's where you could get lost in the system, to where you can't find the help, or you just. Give you an example. I have an employee. I have
Bust you out there.
yeah.
I have an employee.
Got the
He's
bus.
been here for almost all his life, since he was 10 years old. He's 30 years old now, and he still hasn't gotten all his paperwork completed to where he's a U.S. citizen.
That's right.
He can't vote.
Yep.
He can't vote in the elections.
That's right.
He still pays taxes.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
You pay the taxes, but you can't bitch about anything because you're not a citizen. Now it's kind of on him, because he's got a lawyer, and I know him, and he just hasn't followed through yet. But it is a long process, and it's something that it takes some pushing. And what about the people that you work with that don't, that you get these Latin countries where they're very machismo, where they don't feel like they need the help, or it's like a guy who won't go to the hospital because I don't need a doctor, and then the next thing you know, he's about ready to die of pneumonia, right? You got to take care of the problem. And sometimes you need a doctor or you need a lawyer.
Right.
Well, from what I've seen, there is a big problem of coming from a machista culture. That's undeniable. But from what I've seen, and some of this kind of shocked me when I was seeing it, comparing across different cultures, why people don't come to ask for help. And in certain cultures, it's based on fear. So especially when you have a culture that has been so targeted by ICE. So if you're from maybe a Hispanic country, you might be, well, let's say if you entered the United States undocumented and you didn't get caught at the border, but you're living in the shadows because you're under the radar. And a lot of people at that point are saying, I don't want to talk to anybody, I don't want to do anything, I want to stay under the radar. And a lot of people miss opportunities to be able to apply for immigration relief because they are afraid to make their presence known. So they stay under the radar. A lot of people who come to us are coming because they were placed in removal proceedings, and they've been told very specifically by the judge, next time you come back, you need to come back with a lawyer so that you can have someone to help you with your case. And that's a motivator to go out and find an attorney, because then you're no longer under the radar. Immigration knows you're here and they're actively taking steps against you. But the other dynamic that I saw that caught me by surprise, but now I get it, was when people don't ask for help because of shame. And where I heard that was when we were at a round table that was hosted by our church and a couple of nonprofits in Oakland, and they were having people from just a broad diversity of people from immigrant cultures coming in and talking. And from people in the Asian community, they were saying, well, we're trying to do more outreach to immigrants from Asian communities. Why aren't we doing a better job? And a couple of people were speaking up saying, well, it's because of shame. And that one caught me like, whoa, shame. Wow, because on my dad's side of the family, everyone's an immigrant from the Caribbean, and shame in an immigrant context, that's not part of our reality. It's like For us, where's the immigrant value of shame? That comes up because you didn't finish college, not because of your immigration status. So it was an eye-opener for me to hear that that would be something that would stop people from trying to get help. Because in the Hispanic culture, it's not really about shame, it's about fear. So it kind of depends on who you are and how you see yourself culturally, and then how you perceive your status here in the United States. But the other thing you were saying about people from Mexico and on how long it's taking, this is one part that a lot of Americans don't get. And we talk about white privilege, but to me there's also a thing as American privilege. So when you have Americans of all colors who don't understand how the immigration processes work in this country, and they say, well, my family came here and they did so and so and so, why don't you just come and get in line like everybody else? And getting in line is a hell of a thing depending on where you're from. And the worst example I can think of with the longest line is if you are, let's say, an American citizen, or you're an American with a green card, and let's say American citizen. You have to be a citizen for this. So let's say you're an American citizen and you have a brother or a sister who's Mexican, and they're in Mexico, and you want a petition to bring them here. Well, of course you can. But the backlog of petitions is so long for an American citizen wanting to petition for a brother or sister in Mexico. The waiting list is 15 years.
Oh.
USCIS, which is the Department of Immigration Benefits, they are just now processing the petitions that they received 15 years ago. So when you say, well, why don't you just get in line like everybody else? It's like you don't understand what that line is about. That's someone that's like, you know nothing about what lines are in this country.
Right.
They must be using the old IRS computers.
Yeah.
That is
It's 15
years.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That is insane.
Yeah.
That is.
You did mention something about outreach. You know, when you have this fear and this shame and these people, they're not looking to, or they're waiting for someone to like make the first move to get them to start asking for help. What type of outreach programs do you have? Are social media, volunteering? Do you get people to come in and help you guys spread the word? What type of I guess this is kind of an outreach right here, trying to put the word out there and saying, hey, it's safe. It may take 15 years, but not all the time.
I would say it's safe to talk to an immigration attorney.
Yes.
Because those conversations are confidential. They're protected by attorney-client confidential rules. For me, outreach, the two main places that come to mind, like here in Contra Costa County, which went away for a while, but they had a program called Lawyers in the Library, where every so often they would set up like a 2-hour session at the Richmond Library or different libraries in the county, and they would ask for volunteer attorneys to come in and just be available for people to come in and do 30-minute consultations on whatever, landlord-tenant issues, family law issues. So they would ask me to come for immigration issues, and I would just sit up in the library and people sign up to come and talk, and just talk to people for like 30 minutes at a time, and answer their immigration questions as much as I could. So I've done that, and then I've also done volunteering because my office is in Alameda County, so I've done volunteering at Oakland Unified School District, but they have a pretty robust outreach and support program through the school systems, and then they would set up times where they're going to have they have volunteer attorneys come in and talk to families and answer family questions about the family's immigration case or a particular child's immigration case. Like maybe the parents came here years ago and they weren't caught by ICE.
Yeah.
So the parents are still under the radar.
But the
child came here to join the parents for whatever. Maybe there were too many gang problems, whatever. Now the child has to come here, and the child gets caught at the border. If they're a minor, they get sent to an immigration shelter for unaccompanied minors until they can be released to a parent, get vetted. Whatever adult's going to take them have to be vetted, and then they get released. But that child's now above the radar, and the family needs to get some advice. What do we do for this child?
You become like a ward of the state.
Interesting.
They would be A lot of times, if you're unaccompanied minor, you could be released to parents, to aunts, uncles, cousins, or maybe you don't have any relatives here. You have maybe a play aunt or a play uncle, and you'd get released to that person. But that's all by a social worker who's working through a shelter. Here we go with the hierarchy. A private shelter that has contracted with the Office of Refugee Resettlement, which is a department of the United States Department of Health and Human Services. So it all goes back to the government, and the shelters are authorized to find out who can take this child out of the shelter, and then they have to do extensive background checks, and then the child gets released to that person as their sponsor, but it doesn't give them any legal status, and the sponsor is responsible for making sure that that child, whatever they're eligible for, that they get on the path to getting something, making sure they go to school. That's a big issue. That could be a big issue because a lot of times people are saying, well, we took a loan to pay a coyote to bring you here, to get you out of XYZ company, and now that country, and now that you're here, you owe me money. Because I had to take out a loan for XYZ thousands and thousands of dollars to pay the coyote for you. And so the pressure is on the child to go work instead of going to school.
Wow. Okay.
That's a
So
lot
we
to
talked.
take.
It is
Yeah.
a lot. Now you talked about these child shelters, which are basically like
To me, it's a
prisons,
detention for
detention
kids.
facility.
Yes.
And then recently it's been coming under fire. ICE putting these people into these privately run detention facilities. Going back the last 3 years, they've been doing some research and finding out about the atrocious, just barbaric conditions that are in these places. I mean, lack of medical attention to people that are actually, very bad off to begin with. Could be like a diabetic, in need of some just in need of insulin, like daily. People that have that need, and they're just not given the attention, and they don't have the medical facilities there. But yet they're making money from the U.S. government by detaining these people until things could be processed. And we're finding that it takes so darn long to do the processing that meanwhile it's not a little shelter, or it is a detention facility, and it's just like a prison. So
It is a prison. But that's the American way.
It started.
Yeah.
It started. This study started 3 years ago, and that was under Trump, and now the Biden administration is slow to move. Biden is now saying that it is on Congress to act, and that's not going to happen because we know the political situation right now. Congress won't lift a finger to help immigrants.
But technically that's true because the president doesn't have the authority under the Constitution to
Correct.
make laws, just to carry out the laws. So Congress has authority to make immigration policy as long as it doesn't violate anything else in the Constitution. And like you say, what are you going to see Congress doing these days? There's too much infighting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they
There's too
can't
much
build a
divisiveness.
wall.
Yeah, because you have
You can't build a wall. And you
You
can't
have-
get Congress
yeah.
to build a wall.
You have clients who, we talked about attorney-client privileges. Well, we have a client and an attorney, unless of course you have that attorney-client privilege, unless you're conspiring to commit a crime, right? And then you lose that
Unless
attorney-client
someone was going to
privilege.
be injured. I think if I knew a client was planning on committing a crime, I still think I have a duty
What
to
if
zealously
you were
represent the client.
conspiring to commit that crime?
If the client told me they're getting, which happened, I think, at Cal, which got this in motion. If you have a privilege of confidentiality, but your client tells you that they're planning to go out and harm someone,
Yeah.
then do you have the duty to take action that way? And I think you do. Actually, you do.
You do.
You do. I'm being nice here. It's the cab talking.
Yeah, I was going in a different direction with that attorney-client privilege, but that's okay.
Well, no, where were you going to go with it?
Well, I mean, if you conspire to commit a crime with your attorney,
Oh!
then you lose that attorney.
You will lose
client
everything.
He's trying to go Rico.
Oh, what do you mean? How could you say that?
Rico, you mean like Uncle Rico from?
Uncle Donnie.
No.
Yeah, Rico.
What's his name?
Yeah, Rico.
Uncle Julie.
Yes.
Giuliani.
Yeah. That's a shame.
Well, this has been very eye-opening. I first of all, I commend you for doing some really God's work. I mean, it's compassionate work. You're taking these people that are lost souls and walking them through the valley of darkness. Okay, just use